So who are you?
Who am I? I'm John Kao,
Yeah.
friend of Rob Scoble's.
Thanks.
FOR.
Oh man. So what have you been doing for a year?
Well, the book came out, and the
Which
book
one
was
again?
Innovation Nation,
Yep.
which was looking at the U.S. and how we were doing as a country with regard to our innovation muscle and our innovation kind of, were we fulfilling our potential as the original innovation nation?
Yep.
Because there was a time when we were the industry standard. And the book Innovation Nation was basically my attempt to try to sound the alarm about how I thought our national innovation muscles had kind of eroded, and also a prescription for what to do about it. But in order to do that, I spent a lot of time looking at the global scene, because a lot of countries and also regions and cities are focusing on innovation as an explicit agenda. And so we're a country that doesn't have a phone number in the Federal Registry for innovation, but if you go to Norway or Finland or Chile or any one of a number of countries, there are stakeholders who are investing public money to do large-scale projects and doing them in a way that I think has benefited from all the experience we've had in the 70s and 80s about how not to do government-catalyzed large-scale innovation, which is a book unto itself. So the year has been amazing. I've spent a lot of time in Finland. I've spent a lot of time in Chile. I've spent time in China. I've been looking around the world at innovation hotspots and trying to formulate my own point of view about what's going on out there, what it all means, what it means for companies. So somebody with a big idea can now put together a special ops team of 8 people and have the impact of a 300-person startup. So the leverage creates much more advantage for the super empowered individual in the innovation scheme, as well as where that term originated, which is in sort of national security.
Yeah.
It's interesting times.
Yeah. So what else are you seeing happen? You're here in the middle of Silicon Valley. You're in the middle of San Francisco, where Twitter is just down the street.
Sure.
And Facebook is 30 miles away, and Google is 40 miles away. So
there's a lot to be said for experiments that are going on in terms of open innovation with regard to these societal issues. So I think one of the interesting things that's going to happen over the next few years is people creating platforms that will harness the wisdom of crowds, so to speak, in service of societal, as opposed to strictly, money-making, narrowly capitalistic ideas. And that's going to be a model that's, I think, in a funny kind of way, it's going to be just as important in the U.S. as in other parts of the world, because, we're all of a sudden kind of short of money. So in a way, our mindset has gone from a first world to a second or third world mindset. Overnight, because now we got to figure out how to do better with the resources we have. And, so I think what's going to happen is there are going to be all of these interesting opportunities for innovation flows where people who create the platforms on which the communities can evolve will have a bird's eye view of what all of the interesting new ideas are. And, we have some prototypes of this type of thing in philanthropy, in climate, in other areas where, people who own the platforms or have sponsored the platforms are beginning to have a different kind of leadership role. It's not leading from the front. It's kind of like being the curator and leading from behind, and almost like being the studio executive, right?
Well, this is why I spent so much time on Twitter and FriendFeed particularly, because I could see which items, which articles or videos or ideas were getting attention, were gaining weight in the community. It's almost like an electron going through the LHC in Switzerland, and as it goes around, over and over and over, it gets more and more power attached to it, more weight gets attached to it. And so when they smash it, it finally has a big pow. What's the 2010 web? Because bring you down a little bit. What's the? Because that's what my first theme is the 2010 web. What does that mean? I'd like to see you just riff on that, because you've spoken at Google. You've been around. You know what's going on in the internet, the iPhone, the mobile, the real-time web. What are you seeing happen in the web, and what do you think everyday businesses should pay attention to, I guess?
Well, clearly, video on the web and the ease of producing video on the web is creating a lot of opportunities for customer insight, for intimacy with customers. If customers is even an appropriate word in 2010, but you know what I mean. That the whole ethnographic idea of user-centered design becomes more real when video becomes so ubiquitous that you can literally peer into anybody's life and learn something about it.
I'm shocked at how many restaurants don't have video of their dishes, of their chef talking about his
and their
philosophy.
ambiance. Yeah, well, exactly. The kind of who's cooking your food type of thing, right?
Or if you're at a bike shop, do a little video every day on this is a mountain bike, or for $1,000, and this is what you need to worry about if you're. Put that up, because people are searching Google for that kind of information, right?
Well, and telling your story.
Yeah.
And then, I think that the marriage of high-end or higher, what used to be high-end and very expensive high-resolution video communications with the web, obviously, is a secular trend unto itself. I mean, I must say that I experienced Halo and telepresence and all these other things all at once, and even though I'm pretty comfortable, I have a Tandberg in my office, I'm pretty comfortable doing video conferencing. It was a totally different experience. And now that the price points are coming down to the point where many people can afford them, and telepresence has even appeared on 24, as a little kind of product placement or whatnot. I think that that's going to have a huge impact, because, we've all been sitting around saying that there's going to be a substitution of, kind of travel with video communications, but it really hasn't happened. But that's partly because the video part of the equation hasn't been that good.
Yeah.
And
you need to be able to see the iris of the person you're looking at, to see if how they're reacting, particularly in cultures where the people are very adept at hiding their emotion.
Sure.
Japan,
Yeah.
Parts of China. You have to have that face-to-face and be able to look in somebody's eye and see, is their iris did it get big all of a sudden because you told them something really interesting?
Exactly.
People have told me this during negotiation, that you have to be able to see that.
Oh yeah, well that's martial artists know that it's, you always have to look at the eyes, and the eyes signal intent, or
and Skype can't show that, right?
Not at all.
Even this, I mean, this is a 1080p camera.
Yeah.
If I could deliver this 1080p to everybody,
they
could see.
They could see it. Right.
Your small micro signals, whether you're interested in what I'm saying or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fascinated, of course, but the other thing is that these kind of telepresence halo systems, whatever, they create a shared space that's very different from watching somebody on TV and hearing their voice through your speakers. I mean, literally, it's like you're sitting at the same table. You're kind of, because of the lack of latency and the kind of smoothness of the whole thing, it's sort of like the phenomenon of going to the movies, where, literally speaking, you'd kind of question sitting in a chair for 2 hours looking at a screen. But within a couple of minutes, unless the movie is terrible, you kind of give yourself up to the experience, right? And you're engaged and immersed. It's the same thing with these high-end video systems. It's a different kind of experience, and I think that's...
it's absolutely. I've given talks at Cisco with them, and it's really cool. You lose yourself in the conversation, and you forget you're talking to.
It's just here's this guy who's in Sydney, Australia, but you're having a meeting, right? Yeah. And magically, it's like the holodeck. I mean, they're there, and you're doing business, and you remember that event very differently from we had a phone chat or we had a video conference. I mean, it's a different medium. Yeah. I think that the other thing is I still think that there's a fair amount, on Main Street, there's still a certain amount of, how to put it, skepticism or, kind of lack of engagement with social media, right? I mean, it's cute. Time Magazine talks about it. My kid, Twitters. Ha ha ha. But I think 2010 is when there's going to be a certain consolidation, a catching up in a way.
It's interesting. I haven't prompted you with any of the themes of the 2010 web, and you're hitting
oh, really?
a good chunk of them.
Well, okay. So I mean, it's maybe we're all seeing the same thing, that a lot of this stuff, which has seemed a little bit, I won't say fringe, but more for younger people or for people who are really into the internet, are now going to be taken much more for granted, and that I mean, obviously the performance of Facebook, the mainstreaming of Twitter, are symptoms of how we're going to have a lot more choices that at the same time are going to feel mainstream, assuming that people have the user interface design smarts to be able to make it easy for mainstream people to use. Yeah. But 1 billion downloads on the iPhone App Store is a symptom too. I mean, people are hungry for high quality interactivity. There's an enormous unsated appetite for it, and so I think that's just all going to continue.
Because I'm a power user of everything you're talking about. I'm finding that I'm after sitting on my screens for a weekend or whatever, I crave intimacy. I crave this kind of stuff. This kind of face-to-face conversation, going to beers, having parties, having events. There's 6 Twitter events in the next 4 months, right?
Yeah.
And one this week is sold out. I mean, it's like, why are we having a conference about Twitter?
Yeah, right.
And why is it sold out? I think when you're staring at these screens of just these little words and pixels, that we start to get a sense of who you are, and we want to meet you. We want to hang out,
right.
And we want more intimacy, more depth to our conversations. Because in 140 characters, you just can't get depth.
Well, and I think a lot of people are suspicious, maybe too strong a word, but they haven't they haven't given in to the suspension of disbelief that there's something valuable in having a social experience that was first created by technology. And I know I'm a little bit guilty of that because I have, a zillion LinkedIn invitations. And I just feel like, in a way, I live so much in analog space defining, people who I want to be associated with, that I don't see always the value added of having technology do some of that work for me. But I'm starting to be more trusting. I'm starting to be more open. And I'm starting to believe that there's a utility to linking the way I spend time with real people in a real place, and the linking that's possible to have through social media.
Yeah, I'm surprised at businesses that don't have real people on their websites, and most of them don't. If you looked at 1,000 websites by pizza shops or Best Buy or Toyota or on and on, I mean, from big companies down to small mom and pop companies on Main Street, they don't put real people on. There's no way to chat with people or join into a community of the people who go into the bar, and I think that's going to start really changing in the next year. I think people are going to see that, there's a way to fill up a restaurant when it's empty, because if I have 1,000 people in my Google Friend Connect community or my Facebook Connect community, I can talk with them and I can offer them something that'll get them into the restaurant. Well, I can build a new experience. I can do something innovative.
Well, it's very interesting to see how on demand this kind of community-based feedback or input is becoming. So, I'm sure you found this too. I mean, you belong to various online communities and you ask a question and you get a lot of input. Right? So that's kind of the power of the network to take care of you in a way. Yeah. And it's input that you never would have found on your own, right? So it's valued opinion. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I mean, so Wikipedia is great because you have a question, you go and you get the Wikipedia entry. But, the next step is to say, okay, I've got a question about X, and get it back from. I mean, there have been obviously embryonic efforts to do that, but it hasn't had the power of real matchmaking and salience. pastiche there. Antonio Carlos Jobim's Wave, mixed with a little blues, mixed with a little sort of modal harmony. But that's what music is about these days.
That's what conversations are about, too.
Exactly.
A little bit of everything.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for continuing the conversation.